This is Corner Talk.
What's going on, guys? This weekend we have UFC Vegas, Gamrot versus Salkilld. We're gonna break the card down. Hopefully, this card lives up to last week's card. Last week, UFC Serbia, we had some bangers, some very, very fast finishes. It broke the record for the most first round finishes and the most finishes on a card. So I'm looking forward to seeing if this card will live up to the hype. I'm sure it's probably not going to have as many finishes, but it should still be a good card. I think there's some really good matchups. All right, so the first fight of the night, we have Juliana Miller versus Ravina Oliveira. Ravina Oliveira, she's training at the Q in Vegas with Diony Barbosa. A lot of good talent over at that gym. I think very highly of them. Juliana Miller, she won the Ultimate Fighter. She's had some ups and downs in her career so far. I do think that this is going to be a tricky fight. Oliveira is moving up in weight for this fight. I do think that Miller, she's a bit tricky with her length because she is a taller, longer fighter for this division. I do think that sometimes her jiu-jitsu gives girls problems. The issue I have with Miller is, her striking is a bit, lazy. Her jiu-jitsu is good, but I do think that Oliveira also has good jiu-jitsu. I'm hoping to see Oliveira throw a bit more volume this time. She lands about 2 strikes per minute, so I do kind of want to see that increase a bit. If she does that, I do think that this is a winnable fight for her. Potentially taking Juliana Miller down as well. Control time. I think that this is a winnable fight. As far as a pick for this fight, I'm probably going to stay away. I'm probably not going to have any action on this fight, but I'm excited to see if, Oliveira training at the Q will give her some different results. Next fight on the card, we have Miles Johns versus Jesse Rosas. Jesse is the brother of Raul Rosas. Obviously Jesse, he has good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling. He trains with his brother, so obviously, growing up, they've been training together their whole lives. Jesse has a lot of submission wins on his record. Miles Johns, though, we know that, he's a bit of a veteran at this point. He has many fights in the UFC. He pushes an incredible pace. He loves to utilize his wrestling skills to dominate with control time. He also has some decent striking. I do think that, this is a tough test for Jesse Rosas in his first fight. He's going to have to deal with that pressure early. And he's kind of fighting an uphill battle here because, those first fight debut jitters are a real thing against a guy like Miles Johns, who's also going to push a very heavy pace. I do think that, those are things that you should take into account here. That being said, Jesse Rosas is a bit tall for this division. Again, he has great striking. Miles Johns weighed in his last fight at 135. This fight's going to be taking place at featherweight, so I'm curious to see how Miles Johns is going to look here. This is an interesting one. I'm going to say that Jesse Rosas will be able to utilize his grappling chops to potentially put Miles Johns into some bad positions. He's probably pretty slick off his back as well. So I do think that, if he utilizes his grappling here, I do think that he'll be able to pull off this win. It'll be a big win. I think Miles Johns is probably fighting for, his job in this one. So I'm going to pick Jesse Rosas, but it definitely would not surprise me if Miles Johns is able to pull this off just with that experience that he has. Moving on, we have Manuel Sosa versus Richie Miranda. I'm a big fan of Richie Miranda. I like Bloodlines. They have a lot of killers over there. Richie is a dog. This guy fights at an incredible pace. He's very aggressive. He throws nasty elbows. He reminds me of a Chris Padilla. Taco. Taco loves to use those elbows, especially close range. In that clinch, he's very dangerous. You have to be on your P's and Q's, or else he's gonna chop you up with those elbows. Manuel Sosa, very explosive. I will say that, but he has been rocked. We saw him in his last fight get rocked early. Granted, he ended up winning, so he does have dynamite in the hands. But I do think that this is going to be a fight that is more of a war of attrition. I think that as the fight goes on, Richie Miranda will be able to take over. He's just going to have to be extremely diligent with his defense. I think that Manuel Sosa is going to come out extremely explosive. So he's going to have to weather the storm early. But as the fight goes on, Sosa's going to slow down. He's going to become more hittable. And I do think that Richie, close range, will be able to hit him with some nasty elbows and utilize his wrestling chops as well. So I'm going to pick Richie Miranda here. I'm excited for his debut. I'm looking forward to see, what he does at this higher level. Moving on, we have Louis Sutherland versus Henrique da Silva Lopez. I'm going to be honest, Louis Sutherland hasn't looked the greatest in the UFC so far. He got heel hooked by Walter Walker. He had that very sloppy fight with Taito Ivasa. And Henrique da Silva Lopez, this guy, another one making his debut. I'm going to be honest, his record is kind of sus. I do think that, we see these guys come in with a lot of first round finishes. They meet an opponent at this higher level that they're not really conditioned for. And as the fight goes on, it usually is pretty bad. Um, Silva Lopez, he has been knocked out in the past. He's also been submitted in the past. Granted, he doesn't really have much of a risk there against Louis Sutherland, but I think this is going to be a sloppy heavyweight fight. Whoever lands the first, clean shot, probably going to win this. Being that, Louis Sutherland really needs a win here, I am going to pick Louis Sutherland, but not a very confident pick. I think, whoever lands clean first is getting put out. Moving on, we have DR Norgozai versus Bruno Lopez. I'm going to be honest, I do not trust the chin of Bruno Lopez. The guy has showed in the past that he is a bit chinny. Granted, he has lost to some very higher level comp. We know that he got knocked out by Navajo Sterling. He also got knocked out by Dustin Jacoby. Not bad losses by any means. I just think that, the guy, he's a little older. He's 33. Going up against Norgozai. One issue about Norgozai is, he has that tick with his eye where he's constantly messing with the eye. And I think that interrupts his flow, especially at this level. It seems like he is fidgeting with his face more than he's actually throwing strikes. That being said, his only real weakness since he's been in the UFC is against, good grapplers. He has 2 submission losses so far in the UFC. He has a decision win over Tobias. I think that if he is a bit more aggressive here, if he ups the volume here, I do think that he'll be able to put Bruno Lopez away. But again, he has shown some weaknesses in the grappling department. So Bruno Lopez may be able to just hold him up against the cage and kind of just pick away at, his body, at his knees, and win a boring fight. So not a very confident pick here, but I'm going to go with Norgozai. Moving on, we have Steven Asplin versus Guilherme Pat. I'm excited about this fight. Steven Asplin, absolute dog, very high volume. The guy throws 10 strikes per minute. That's insane. That is an insane pace for a guy that weighs 265 pounds. I love Steven Asplin's story. The guy has power. The guy has volume. On the other side, Guilherme Pat, guy's 32. He does have some power. He did lose a decision to Thomas Peterson where, he looked great early. And then as the fight went on, his gas tank was exposed. He's slowed down immensely. And, in this fight, I don't know, man. I think Steven Asplin is going to pick him apart over time. I think the volume is going to be too much for Pat. And I like Steven Asplin's chances here. I like his chin. I think that he's going to be able to get this done. He has a small reach disadvantage. I'm sorry, but yeah, I like Steven Asplin here. I just think over time, you know, he's going to be the fresher fighter. I think he's going to be able to pick apart Guilherme Pat, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets him out of there in round 2 or 3. So give me Steven Asplin for the pick. Really excited for that fight. I think that's going to be a banger. Moving on, we have Billy Ray Goff versus Ty Miller. Um, this is a tough fight for Billy Ray Goff. I think, he really needs a win here if he wants to stay in the UFC. And Ty Miller is a very game opponent. Ty Miller, dangerous striker. The guy has very clean boxing. He also has some good grappling that I've seen on the regional scene. He's coming from LFA, successful win in the Dana White Contender Series, and then he knocked out Fugit in or at UFC 324. So he has taken a little bit of time off, about 7 months, but he's coming back. Billy Ray Goff, in his last one, he did get submitted by Ramiz Brahimaj. That was a bad one, He got choked completely unconscious. But before that, he's looked pretty good in the UFC. He did lose to Trey Waters, which is not the greatest loss, but I don't know, man. I like Billy Goff. I think it's just a matter of who he's training with. Who is he spending these camps with? How much, high level time is he getting in? And, Ty Miller, I know he is, he's getting some good time in. I just think that unfortunately Billy Ray Goff is probably going to lose this fight. Um, he's significantly shorter than Ty Miller. I don't think that he's going to be able to wrestle with Ty Miller. He has a 5-inch reach disadvantage. So on the feet, he's going to have to be very, very sharp defensively. I think, unfortunately, this is Ty Miller's fight. So that's going to be the pick. Moving on, we have Amanda Lemos versus Alexia Tainara. Tainara is an absolute savage. At 5'4", 67-inch reach, this girl can beat you anywhere. She can beat you on the feet. She'll submit you. Very, very crazy pace. Amanda Lemos, we know she wants to keep it on the feet because once she gets taken down, that's pretty much the round. She's going to lose the rest of the round. She does have some slick submissions, though, I will say. Slick ninja choke, stuff like that. But I just think that Alexia Tainara, she's only 30. Amanda Lemos is pushing 40. She's not really as aggressive as she used to be. Whereas I think Tainara, she's very aggressive. She's going to come out extremely aggressive in the first round. She's going to be throwing big shots. If she has a moment, she's going to take you down. And she's going to either try to submit you or smash your face in. So I do think, unfortunately, Amanda Lemos is going to lose this fight. I like Alexia Tainara. And honestly, I think she could get the finish here. Possibly late, but I think that she's going to end up getting a submission here. So Alexia Tainara is the pick. And I'm excited to see if she wins this fight, who they match her up with next. She's finally moving up in the division. I think she has some very exciting fights. Next fight, we have Darren Elkins versus Yadier Davaye. I don't even know what the matchmakers were thinking here. I think this is like Darren, it's time to retire type fight. Yadier is probably going to pick Darren apart on the feet. I think that he also, excuse me. I think that he's also going to be able to out-grapple Darren Elkins here. Yadier, he had that fight against Dogarian that everybody said was, a thrown fight. He came out here and he fought Jordan Levitt. He lost to Jordan Levitt, but Jordan Levitt is a very, very experienced opponent. You know, it's not an easy fight for anybody. Um, he struggled in that fight, but I think this is the fight for him to bounce back. I think he's gonna find success here. I think he's gonna be able to get Darren Elkins out of there pretty early. But Darren Elkins is a dog. He can take some damage. So I think that this is a spot where Yadier is going to have to submit him to really get him out of there. I don't know if he's going to be able to KO him, but Yadier is my pick. This is a very confident one. Same as Tainara. Both those fights, confident picks. Moving on, we have Diego Ferreira versus Billy Q. Unfortunately, I also think that Billy Q should start thinking about retirement. Diego Ferreira, though, is 41. And, Father Time is undefeated. I do think that Diego Ferreira has a clear grappling advantage here. I do think he also has the power advantage here. The issue with Billy Q is he's a zombie. He will eat as many shots as you throw at him. And for the most part, he will stay on his feet. I do think that Diego has enough power to put out Billy Q. So Billy Q is going to have to be extremely on his P's and Q's. I think that, if he fights like he usually does, which he probably will in this fight, he's going to come out there. He might eat a couple of shots. He might land a couple of good shots as well. But I think over time, something's going to clip him. Something's going to put him down. And I think that Diego Ferreira will either club and sub or eventually use his grappling and submit Billy Q. So I like Diego Ferreira here. It is a little sketch taking a 41-year-old, but on the other side, 37, he's also pushing 40. Billy Q, not the most dangerous guy either on the roster. So I think this is a spot where Diego will be able to look good. And if you look at the records, like Diego Ferreira has beat some very tough competition in the past. I know it was a couple of years ago, but he beat Rebeshki, who just got a win last week. He beat Michael Johnson. Those were both KOs. He only lost to Grant Dawson, unanimous decision recently. Grant Dawson is beating some of the highest, level lightweights out there. And then Hernandez, which, Hernandez had a little bit of a resurgence for a while. So I like Diego Ferreira here. I think he's going to be able to pull it off. So that's my pick for that fight. And the main event, we have Mateusz Gamrot versus Quillan Salkilld. I've been going back and forth on this fight because I think the value is with Gamrot. I believe the fight's a pick'em. I think that Gamrot, obviously, he has very high level wrestling. He also has great cardio. He's known for, taking you down and drowning you over, 15, 25 minutes. And Quillan Salkilld is untested in this area so far. He had some issues with Beneil Dariush early. He was able to get him out of there eventually. But Beneil Dariush is, unfortunately, levels below Mateusz Gamrot. Mateusz Gamrot is still, going out here, performing against the best guys in the division. Recent loss, Charles Oliveira, not a bad loss, and Dan Hooker, where he just kind of slowed down as the fight went on. But aside from that, he's beating RDA, he's beating Klein, Esteban Rivovic. He just got that submission at UFC 327 over him in the second round. That fight, he was pretty much in control the entire time. I just think that Quillan Salkilld is biting off a bit more than he can chew at this point in his career. I think that, he still needs some time to sharpen up, some of those tools. And unfortunately, I think Gamrot's going to be able to just take him down and keep him there for an extended period of time. I don't think that Quillan's going to be able to get back up to his feet. Even if he does, it's Gamrot's game to just continuously take you down and wear on that gas tank. So unless Quillan catches him with something big and puts him out cold, I don't see Salkilld winning this fight if it goes the distance. I just think that Gamrot over 25 minutes is going to be able to, zap the gas tank of Salkilld. I think he's going to be able to make him less dangerous. And, without that explosiveness, I don't think that Salkild's going to be able to do much to Gamrot. So I like Mateusz Gamrot here. I am a big fan of Salkilld though, so if he pulls it off, great for him. If he pulls it off, it just goes to show he is ready to, start looking at top 5, top 10. I believe Mateusz Gamrot is actually in the top 10, but you know, he beats Gamrot. Next fight's going to be a major fight. It's Salkild's first main event, so this is the time to seize the moment. But unfortunately, I just think that Gamrot's wrestling pedigree is going to be a bit too much, and I do think that he's going to be able to win this fight by decision. So that is my picks for this weekend's card. Big news in the MMA world. So Usman Nurmagomedov has successfully defended his title against Archie Colgan at PFL New York. There's a lot of rumors behind Usman's, next promotion. Is he going to re-sign with PFL? Or is he going to come to the UFC finally? There was a clip of a journalist asking Dana White, are you interested in signing Usman, or would you sign Usman? And he kind of gave a smirk and he did everything but say, we've already signed the guy. I think that's the next move for Usman, just because, he needs some better competition at this point. He's pretty much ran through everybody at PFL. There's some very exciting matchups in the UFC for him at lightweight now that Islam Makhachev has moved up. I think it would be the next step in his career to start shooting for that UFC title. And, I like it. I think that there's a lot of tough matchups in the UFC for him that, will do big numbers. I think the guy is elite. I think that he's ready to, step in and fight somebody in the top 5 of the UFC's lightweight division. So I'm excited to see what happens there. Speaking on PFL though, PFL, they did announce earlier this week that they just signed a deal with MVP. They are merging the company. So I think this is great for MMA. I think that some of the fighters that leave the UFC that go to the PFL, or some of the guys that are just starting their career in the PFL, this is going to give them a big opportunity, whether it be one of those older fighters or one of the, newer fighters. This gives them the opportunity to go through and test themselves. MVP is out here, signing some big prospects. They're putting on big events. Obviously, they have the deal with Netflix. So I think that this is a very exciting venture. We're going to have, boxing and MMA on Netflix now, which is going to make it easily accessible to, the average fan or the casual fan. I think it's great for the sport overall. And, it's always great to have a little bit of competition. So, even though the UFC is, prime time right now, it is the premier MMA promotion. It's great to have a competitor that's also out here doing big things. And I'm excited to see, what this does for PFL, and what this does for MVP. I think that we're going to get some exciting matchups now, with both rosters, and, sky's the limit for them. Hopefully they can, continue to make these big events with big names. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to what, next year brings. Um, Another unfortunate thing in the news this week. El Nascimento has passed away. Unfortunately, they said that he suffered a heart attack in his sleep. Um, it's so heartbreaking here, something like that. Uh, he was a training partner of Charles Oliveira, one of the Shoot the Bucks, mainstays. Um, it's been very heartbreaking to see Charles Oliveira, Diego Lima, just a lot of Brazilian fighters that were touched by El Nascimento throughout his life, share their stories, and, blessings to his family. It's really sad, man. Really sad. Barely over 30. Um, you just got to appreciate life because you never know what can happen. Aside from that, another unfortunate uh news topic. Danny Silva, UFC featherweight Danny Silva from the Bloodlines gym, um, posted earlier this week that he was out running. He had just completed training for the day, and his body started to kind of give out. But he didn't really think anything of it. He thought maybe he was just tired. He finished the run, and when he got home, he noticed some swelling on I think he said the right side of his body. Um, and one of his friends, who I believe he said was a doctor, basically recommended that he go to the ER right away because something was definitely wrong. And I guess they diagnosed him with a pulmonary embolism, which is a very scary thing. Um, he doesn't know if he'll be able to fight again, which is very unfortunate because he's an exciting prospect. He just came over a big win in London. Um, yeah, man, it's tragic, man. Danny Silva, um, we hope everything works out, brother. We hope that you get better, and we would we'd love to see him back in the octagon, obviously. But first and foremost, we hope that he gets healthy, and prayers to him and his family and everybody at the Bloodlines gym. Um, we never want to see something like this happen to a guy, especially that young, that early in his career. So hopefully everything for Danny Silva pans out. Hopefully we'll get to see him back in the future. But yeah, I think that's it as far as MMA news goes. We broke down UFC Vegas, Gamrot versus Salkilld. I appreciate you guys as always. Thank you for watching the podcast. Thank you for coming and stopping by every week. Um, Drop us a like, drop us a comment if you disagree with any of my breakdowns, any of my picks. Let me know why. It's all love. Follow me on Instagram at UFCPap. I appreciate you guys. I will be pushing out some more content next week. I'll be covering PFL Charlotte this week as official media, so I'm looking forward to that again. Um, yeah, thank you guys. See you next week during the recap, and we break down the UFC Philly card. Appreciate it.